Can you not look away from a fender bender? Or stop reading creepy stories on Reddit? Maybe you dream of spending the night at a haunted manor. We tell ourselves that we don't want to know, and yet we can't help ourselves. The wildly growing success of horror films, the popularity of true crime documentaries and podcasts, the rise in disaster tourism, and the prevalence of violence in the news implies that morbid curiosity is a common psychological trait. So why are we so attracted to the dark and the mysterious? What makes us morbidly curious? And have we always been this way? Morbid curiosity is defined as a fascination with grisly or gruesome matters. It's a feeling that is compelling enough that the curious person is driven to satisfy it, even though they suspect that they probably won't like what they find. In a sense, we are drawn to things that disrupt our perceptions, that shift us out of our comfort zone. And while true crime content may be all the rage now, interest in it existed long before Netflix. An eye for an eye wasn't just a saying. In fact, the idiom originated in the ancient Mesopotamian Empire during Hammurabi's rule in the 18th century BC. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth was part of Hammurabi's code. Citizens wanted to be involved in dealing justice. During the Roman Empire in the 6th century BC, gladiators would fight animals to the death, all the while being cheered on by a large crowd. In 991 AD, Vikings recounted horrible details of their battles through poetry. Between 1550 and 1700, hundreds of crime pamphlets circulated around Britain, and ballads were posted around towns that recounted the grisly details of crimes committed. Trial accounts also provided society with details of judicial proceedings. In the 19th century AD, people would actually buy tickets to public hangings. Nowadays, self-proclaimed detectives flock to message boards in hope of solving the next murder. In fact, in 2020, the Murder Squad podcast helped lead to an arrest of a man for a cold case that was 40 years old. So why do so many of us have that morbid curiosity? Most researchers agree that there are a few potential reasons. We're curious about what drives people to do the unthinkable. It's hard not to wonder what leads a seemingly good person down a dark path, what incites people to commit violent acts. Sometimes it's not about the act committed, but why someone committed it. We're deconstructing a mystery, like a jigsaw puzzle, and the final image is something that is totally foreign to most of us. The fact that we're not capable of partaking in such unthinkable acts means the more we know about the motivation behind them, the closer we can get to completing the puzzle, even though we will likely never have that final missing piece. We want to preserve our belief in justice. If someone commits a wrongdoing, we want to know that they will be caught and held accountable. Often there's nothing worse than seeing someone go unpunished for an act that they committed because it goes against our desire to want to believe that the right side will always prevail, that evil will be brought down. In the book Unmasked, My Life Solving America's Cold Cases, Paul Holes describes his career-long obsession with catching the Golden State Killer. Even though it was of great detriment to his personal life, he felt it was of greater importance to provide the victims and families of victims with closure. Although his passion was much more than morbid curiosity, it still provided the ever-important spark to starting this pursuit. We're drawn to the adrenaline of fear. The same chemicals that rush into our bodies when we are scared also make us more attentive and curious even when there is no real threat. The brain is still preparing for that fight or flight response, which causes a spike in dopamine and endorphins, but in a safe space. And it turns out that some of us may get more of a kick from this dopamine response than others. Imagine being on a roller coaster ride. You might start out feeling nervous, stressed, and anxious. By the end, however, that tension is eventually replaced with a surge of relief so great that you are willing to repeat the experience all over again. We're driven by our own longing for survival. The more educated we are about something, the better we can identify it, predict its behavior, and learn how to avoid it. The world as our ancestors knew it was a dangerous place, yet we now face threats of our own, and the desire to survive is still biologically ingrained within us. A 2010 study at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign found that women tend to be drawn towards true crime stories more than men, and that they are more interested in stories that give insight into the killer's motives, that contain information about how victims escaped, and that feature female victims. We know that preparation is key. It's why we have things like dress rehearsals, and it's why we talk to ourselves in the mirror before giving a speech the next day. But crime is chaotic, fluid, and ever-changing. There are a multitude of reasons for why people do the things that they do, and a multitude of ways that things can go wrong. To be best prepared, we learn as much as we can to fit every possible scenario. This fits with the evolutionary idea that people are drawn towards stories where they can identify with the victim and read about tips and strategies for defeating the bad guys. Have you ever heard that everybody loves a good train wreck? The term Schadenfreude is known as a pleasure derived by someone from another person's misfortune. Do you enjoy following celebrity scandals, watching reality TV, or seeing a top sports team defeated? We might not want to admit it, but most of us feel at least a tiny bit of satisfaction seeing someone fall from the top. A tame way to interpret Schadenfreude is that we feel a sense of relief when we realize that people that we perceive to be above our status, such as celebrities, can and do experience bad things. You see it all unfold and suddenly feel better about your own life and situation. Taking the concept of Schadenfreude to the more extreme, some may enjoy seeing people at a lower status, like the mentally ill or homeless, experience pain, sometimes by causing them pain. This can be a sign of low self-esteem and is often handled, for instance, by therapy. We desire to experience someone else's suffering. What if that happened to me? Oftentimes, we try to place ourselves in the shoes of those going through something difficult. Although this may not seem very important, this is what ties together human society and gives us our sense of morality. And what a better way to cultivate our morals than by imagining the terrible pain that victims can suffer. Empathetic feelings remind us that our time is limited and that we are fragile, and by doing so, bring us closer together. So whether you believe that we're compelled by horrible things in order to better our chances of survival, or the more positive outlook that our attraction to the macabre is simply a desire to understand others' suffering, it's safe to say that for as long as humanity exists, morbid curiosity will be lurking in its shadow.